The first thing I saw when the truck stopped was a baseball field, not a fence, not a guard tower, not the thing I had been preparing myself for since the moment the American sergeant put his hand on my shoulder outside that farmhouse in Belgium and said, "It is over, come with me." I had been preparing myself for the fence and the tower and the specific cruelty of confinement that I knew from what we had been told and from what I had seen done to others in uniforms that were not mine. I had been preparing myself for that. There was a baseball field. I did not know what baseball was. I want to say that clearly because it matters to the story. I was 23 years old. I had grown up in Dusseldorf. Nobody in Dusseldorf played baseball. What I saw when the truck stopped was a large, flat area of carefully maintained grass with specific geometric markings and a raised dirt area in the center, and men standing at various positions across it, doing something with a ball and a stick that I could not understand from the back of the truck. The man sitting beside me in the truck was a Hauptmann named Werner Vogt. Werner had been my commanding officer for 11 months. He was 34 years old. He had a wife in Munich and a daughter he had not seen since 1942. He looked at the baseball field and then he looked at me and he said, "This is a joke. This is something they show us before they take us to the real place." I believed him. I need to tell you about Werner before I tell you what happened inside the camp, because Werner is the reason I understand what I am going to say. And what happened to Werner, I will get to that, but not yet. You need to understand what we had been told first, what we had been prepared for, what we carried into that camp as certainty. My name is Heinrich Bauer. I was born in Dusseldorf in 1921. My father was a dentist. My mother taught elementary school. They were not political people, which in Germany in the 1930s was itself a position, a kind of careful silence. I understood even as a child required maintenance. You had to work at being uninvolved. It did not happen naturally. I was conscripted in 1941. By 1944, I was a corporal in the 116th Panzer Division. The Windhund Division, the Greyhound Division, fighting in the Ardennes. This is where the Americans caught us. Not in a dramatic way, in the specific, undramatic way that the end of things often happens, a gradual narrowing of options until there are no options left and a sergeant says it is over. Now I need to tell you what we had been told about American prisoner of war camps. We had been told they were brutal. Specifically brutal, about guards who used prisoners for entertainment and about the specific humiliation the Americans inflicted. Werner believed all of it. He said to us, "When they take us, say nothing. Do not react to anything they show you." So when the truck stopped at Camp Hearn in Texas and I saw the baseball field, I believed Werner when he said it was a performance. I carried that belief through the intake processing, waiting for the performance to end and the real place to reveal itself. What there was a series of small things until the accumulation became impossible to explain as anything except the truth. The first small thing was the food at dinner: roast beef, mashed potatoes, green beans, and a piece of apple pie. I had not eaten a meal of that quality since 1942, not because I was a prisoner, because I was a German soldier. The Wehrmacht was running on inadequate logistics. Our food was black bread, tinned meat, and ersatz coffee made from roasted acorns. I watched Werner work through the sequence. The moment his body recognized it as real food and his face changed. He did not say anything. The following morning, a guard was standing outside. He nodded back and said good morning, not sarcastically. I did not know what to do with this. I went back to the barracks and I told Werner. Werner said they are doing it to gain our trust. They want us to lower our guard. He is building a relationship so he can extract information. This is an intelligence technique. I said, "Werner, what information do we have that is worth this much effort?" Werner did not answer that question. The third small thing was the library. Camp Hearn had a library. It had approximately 2,000 books, a significant number of them in German. It had German newspapers, not current ones, but newspapers. It had chess sets and card tables. It had a craft workshop. It had a dark room for photography. It had, on one occasion that I personally witnessed, a concert performed by a prisoner who was a professional musician before the war, attended by both prisoners and several American staff members who sat in the same room and applauded at the same time. Werner's explanation for the library was that it was a psychological operation designed to make us comfortable enough to reveal information. He said this with complete conviction in February 1945. By March, German military dispositions were becoming academic. I did not point this out to Werner. Werner maintained his position that everything was a performance, an elaborate deception. He maintained it for 4 months. He could not afford to let those foundations be questioned. If they were wrong, everything was wrong. In April 1945, Germany surrendered. The news came through the camp in pieces from multiple sources, the complete picture assembling itself over several hours. I was sitting in the camp yard when Werner came and sat beside me. He sat without speaking for several minutes. Then he said, "They were not performing." That was all he said. I want to tell you what I did with that, with the experience of being treated in a way that was decent, baseline human decency. I went back to Germany in 1946. Dusseldorf had been bombed. The street was not what it had been. My father was alive. My mother had died in 1944 from a heart condition that should have been treatable. I did not know until I walked through the door. I became a dentist like my father. I practiced in Dusseldorf for 35 years. I am 93 years old now. The Americans were not being strategic. They were not feeding us well to extract information. It was simply how you treat people. I have a grandson who is 22. He complains about his university and the state of the world. I listen with complete attention. And sometimes I think about roast beef on a Tuesday evening in January 1945, and I think about Werner and the word decent. Werner came to visit me in 1963. He had become a civil servant in Munich. He brought his daughter, who was 23 and studying law. We sat in my office and we drank coffee, real coffee. And Werner said, "Do you remember the first morning?" I said, "Yes." He said, "The guard who said good morning." I said, "I had too." He said, "He was just a person being polite." Werner died in 1981. His daughter sent me a letter. He had become interested in international law and the treatment of prisoners. It was the most significant moment of my captivity. "Good morning," that is all he said.